everybody. My name's Mary Franklin Smith and I'm one of the psychological therapists. I'm a drama therapist and I work in the Connect Community Service.
Hello, I'm Sarah Parker. I'm also a colleague of Mary's. I work as a therapist in the Connect Community Service too.
And together, Sarah and I often facilitate the Hub Evening Support Group along with a couple of other colleagues from the team. So we wanted to come together and put a recording together for you to sort of introduce you to the space a little bit, so that when you come along to the Hub this evening or whenever you choose to join us, which you are more than welcome any Wednesday, you have a bit of an idea about how we're thinking about what an eating disorder is, and you have a bit of clarity on our sharings about our way out of an eating disorder, because the Hub itself is a space where we're going to have lots of discussions about different themes relating to recovery from eating disorders. And we think that you listening to this first will give you some groundwork and some what would you say,
it kind of adjusts you to the approach that we use really at the Hub, because it's not, I guess it's a little bit different from what we might think of as traditional eating disorder work is. So we're just wanting to kind of, give you a feel for how we might see eating disorders and how we might work with what people bring to the Hub.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is we're going to screen share a PowerPoint slide, because we're really moving with the times, and we're going to talk you through what an eating disorder is, in case that's something that's tricky to understand and confusing for you. And it's also an invitation for you to share this with loved ones and family members if they too are feeling a bit confused about, hang on a minute, what is actually going on here in terms of an eating disorder. And then the second slide is the way out. So what's happening on the way out?
Sorry, Mary, it's important to say that we're not going to be talking about the signs and symptoms of an eating disorder, because I guess a lot of people will recognize those, but we're talking about something beyond that, something that creates the eating disorder in the first.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have said. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so let me go ahead and screen share our very professional looking PowerPoint slide.
Beautifully created by Mary.
Okay, so welcome to the Hub, welcome to the pre-Hub YouTube clip, and we're here to say what is disorder. You'll notice, and some people point out, that there's a mask on this first slide, and the reason for that is because when we're thinking about an eating disorder, we are thinking of it as a sort of assumed identity, or a way of showing up in the world, and what we're doing here is we're looking beneath that, we're looking beyond that. So it's nothing to do with Batman, it's to do with this way of thinking of it as an identity, really. Would you add anything to that, Sarah?
I guess as well, I mean, for me the mask's really relevant because it's often the thing that people with an eating disorder hide behind. So it's almost something we put in front of ourselves so that we become almost invisible.
And it's often the thing that people see as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, they don't see what's going on beneath. Yeah. Okay. So what is an eating disorder? And as Sarah says, we're not talking about the signs and symptoms here. We're talking about the underbelly of it, if you like. So we're saying that at some point in your life, all the way through your life, in fact, you've been thinking. Right? We all think. Thought creates our individual realities. We live in the feeling of our thinking, and we're all thinking all the time and interpreting situations based on the thinking that we have. And at some point in your life, you started to be conscious of thinking that was along the lines of something like, with the sort of flavour, I'm not good enough, or I don't fit in, or I can't cope. Or
you can add your own thoughts into that, because everybody will have some similar thoughts and some really different thoughts.
Yeah.
But I guess what we know is we all have thoughts, and some thoughts kind of get a bit sticky and we think them a few times and we feel something alongside those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the nature of our experience, isn't it? That's that thinking and feeling that are two sides of the same coin are what give us an experience of life in each given moment.
And you're right, Sarah, like we don't know what the thinking was going to be, but it could be that you recognize that some of the thinking that you experience was insecure in its nature, you know, whatever that might be, and that thinking, whatever that might be, will has been generating an embodied experience, because we feel our thinking in all of our body, don't we? You know, we don't just think it in here. We can really experience our thinking in our tummies, or in our chests, or in our hands, or, you know, our whole body will experience the feeling of the thinking that we have. And when that experience, that feeling becomes really overwhelming and feels like a real struggle, we understandably and completely, often very unconsciously, will look for a way to cope with that experience that feels overwhelming.
And at some level, that's brilliant, isn't it? When we're feeling overwhelmed by something, to find a way through it means a way of surviving as human beings. So of course we need to find a way through the overwhelm and the struggle. But I guess what we see when people are in the early days of kind of their overwhelm and struggle and finding ways, you guys that have come to us here start to find ways that are specific to, you know, your eating disorder, that you manage the overwhelm and struggle with. And in the beginning, those things kind of feel helpful, because if they didn't, we wouldn't do them again. You know, we find, well, you know, maybe I binge, or maybe I eat that and then I feel bad, so I purge, or maybe I restrict what I'm eating and I lose weight, and that gives me something to feel good about. Oh, all of a sudden the overwhelm feels a bit more manageable. We think we found a great way of dealing with it, and we do it again. And in those early days, it does feel like a great way, doesn't it, of dealing with it, without doubt, else we wouldn't repeat it.
And when we repeat a coping strategy, that is, well, when we repeat anything over and over again, our brain picks up on that, right? So whether that's the alphabet, or a song that you like or don't like, or your address, or I don't know, your times tables, or your bank details, you will remember something that you do over and over and over again. And it becomes like a pathway in the brain. So the brain starts to regurgitate it for you unconsciously. It's like when you have the experience, I'm in overwhelm, I need to binge, purge, restrict, whatever it is, your brain then starts to just spit that out to you without you even thinking about it. And that's when we start to experience what we perhaps talk about as psychological complications, because it becomes an automatic habitual thought.
It's almost second nature, isn't it? We don't really pay attention to it. It comes, we respond. It comes, we respond. And there's no time between the thought and the response. So we get stuck in that cycle.
Yeah. And so there's psychological complications when your response to stress is a behavior around food, whether that's restricting or binging or messing around with your regular eating. Your brain's going to suffer because of that, because when any human being that's alive is in food scarcity or is in a restrictive period, then they feel differently, that your emotions get heightened, your thinking becomes about food because the system, the intelligence system, is trying to nudge you. Actually, we need energy, we need an energy source here. But you can misinterpret that. Why am I thinking about food all the time? What does that mean about me as a person? And then there's a sort of this perpetuating cycle that pulls you into lots and lots of thinking, but also physical complications, whether that be lack of sleep, you're really finding it hard to relax, you might feel that you have cold extremities, you might start to experience hair loss, tooth decay, heart palpitations, stomach problems, bloating, constipation. You know, it's, I know I've missed some out there, Sarah, but there's complications.
There'll be poor concentration, there'll be all sorts of kind of a whole range of physical and emotional responses to intermittent or reduced food supply to the body.
Yeah. And so it gets to feel complicated, because one of the things that you'll probably experience is lots and lots of sort of cloudy thinking. And I've got my little glass jar here. When your thinking is all over the place and you can't see the wood for the trees, you have no clarity, and you feel it in your whole body. And then you start to do this, which is when you start to sort of mistake this way of experiencing yourself for who and what you are. You just start to think, well, this is just how I am, this is just who I am, this is just how I think, this is how I respond, this is just me.
And I guess with that, we start to create even more thinking about who we are. And those initial thoughts of I'm not good enough, or I'll be better if I'm thinner, or whatever they may be, we start to see them as ourselves. We start to see that's who we are, that's how we are, that's our identity, and then we dislike ourselves even more. So that kind of spiral of negative thinking and unhelpful thinking, insecure thinking, you can see goes round and round in that cycle of thinking and feeling, creating our experience. We become overwhelmed, we fall more into our coping strategy.
Yeah.
And when sorry, Mary. I was just going to say, when you look at that, it's understanding that you know, we can get caught up in that really easily. We can get caught up in it. It's nobody's fault. Nobody chooses to get caught up in that. Nobody wants to get caught up in that. We innocently fall into something that it was initially helpful that becomes habitual and much harder to step away from than we ever imagined.
So the thing that came into our life through the side door as almost a way of helping has become the very thing that we're seeking help for. And that's just self-perpetuating that cycle, because when you're feeling overwhelmed about your eating disorder, it's likely that your eating disorder will be the thing that you turn to. And so that feels really, really, really tricky. And no wonder then that people feel really lost and very, very scared as to how to break that cycle.
And scared about the idea of breaking it, because if you start to learn that your only way of coping is through this eating disorder, it's understandable that people will say, well, I need to keep hold of it. Don't take this away from me. Don't give me treatment. I need this. So that's understandable too.
Absolutely. And we often talk, don't we, Sarah, about people sort of seeing it as a friend, as a life raft, as a savior, really. And I guess that the thing that starts to lead people out it is to start to be really aware of thoughts. Like, I'm thinking of this as a life raft. I'm believing the thinking that says that this is my savior, my friend, my only way through. But I'm starting to understand something about what thought is, the nature of thought.
And that applies to those initial thoughts as well, Mary, doesn't it? Those thoughts of not being good enough, or not, needing to be perfect to be accepted, whatever your thinking might have been in the beginning. It's about understanding that actually thoughts aren't the truth. They're not facts. They're just puffs of energy that come into our awareness, into our conscious awareness. And some of them will just come and go and come and go. What colour pants am I putting on this morning? We don't spend hours focusing on that. We just think about it, let it go. And actually, it's understanding that we can do that with all of our thoughts. But for some reason, some of them got a bit sticky and we saw them as more important. But the nature of thinking is that it's all equal until we add that sense of power or importance to the thought. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, and I guess I always think of it as like some thoughts have, I say, don't I, suits on and briefcases and very, very loud, and you might call them intrusive thoughts, or I call them sort of suitcase thoughts, but they're for the thoughts that we believe, absolutely, we will look for evidence for to prove that they're true. So it's about, the way out, if you like, or the way to find freedom beyond this is to really see, okay, hang on a minute, that thought has a massive role to play here, and I want to look at the nature of the way I think, the way I respond to my thinking, more than the content of my thinking.
Yeah, it's about stepping back a bit, isn't it, and creating a bit of space to watch your thoughts, be the observer of your thoughts, rather than just blindly going with them.
Yeah, following them.
And you know what, Mary, when you said that, it really made me think about one of the thoughts that I often had when I was unwell, and I would totally believe it, even though I saw evidence against it. And that's the power of thinking, isn't it? Even when we can disprove it, it gets to be like a habitual thought that's so powerful that it doesn't make sense, and yet we still believe it. And we still can change that.
You mean, what do you mean change that?
Well, I guess change our relationship to that.
Yeah.
Change our relationship to what we see in it, what we do with it, how we respond to it, if we respond to it at all.
And also, I think how we respond to and understand the feelings that come with it. So it's like when we really see the link between thought and feeling, like sometimes I think it's a conscious thought that we're aware of that almost comes first, and then we have a feeling because of it. And sometimes I think it's the other way around. We just wake up in a grouchy mood, or we just feel out of sorts, and we're not quite sure what the thought is, or the reason is, if you like. And in a way, that's not as important as just recognizing that whatever your experience is that's generated through thoughts and feelings, you're safe to feel it.
Yeah.
And more than you're safe to feel it, you will feel it because you're alive. Yeah. So because we're human and we're alive, we will feel, and we will live in the feeling of our thinking. And really starting to understand something about what feeling is, where it comes from, and the very fact that just like the ocean rises and falls, just like the sky gets grey and dark and blue again, we will experience the transient nature of the thought feeling experience as humans. And when we start to go, oh, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm thinking this, I'm believing this, I'm experiencing this in my body. Now I'm feeling this, now I'm thinking this. And we start to really notice it as a transient thing, like the sea, like the weather. We can become much more accepting of it and understanding of it.
And I think within that acceptance and understanding as well, it's much less impatient with it. Because I think, I don't think any of us really enjoy being in some tricky thoughts. I don't think any of us enjoy being in some uncomfortable feelings. And yet it's knowing that at some point it will always pass, because as human beings, we cannot sit in one experience for forever, because that's not in our design. Just like in the UK, we don't sit in one season forever. It changes. It doesn't change when we want it to change. It changes when it's ready to change, and when the bigger design, if you like, prepares for that change. And that's the same with us. We might think, well, I can tolerate some distress for half an hour, but that's me done. We kind of don't get to choose that necessarily, but we don't need to either, because we know that the design of our bodies, of our minds, of human beings is, it feels unpleasant, and we can sit in it until it's passed, until it moves on. We don't need to move it on its way before it's ready, because that just often engages us with those tricky feelings much more and makes them a bit more sticky and keeps them around a bit longer.
It's that saying, what we resist persists.
Yeah.
Like when we really resist something, I often talk about it as like a child, like who's like trying to get your attention. You're like, go away. And they just get louder and louder and louder. And you're like, what is it? And when you turn your attention to and be accepting of, as hard as that is, and sort of, okay, what is the message here in this for me? What is it? What is this alerting me to? What are these feelings here to tell me and share with me? then it's more likely to pass on through. But that's not a reason to do it. You know, it's like, well, it is a reason to do it, but it's just because you turn around and say, I accept you feelings, that they'll pass on through. It's like, it's really understanding, well, what is this feeling here to bring my attention to? And I think very often that is that I am believing with all of my being some really horrible, insecure thinking about who I am, or what I am, or what's possible for me, or what others think of me. Like, the feelings are there as our guides, as the poem goes.
Absolutely. And I think we've touched on, you know, sitting with those feelings and the compassion that we can have for ourselves, for those feelings, for our experience. And, you know, it's that sense of acceptance, that sense of being compassionate about where we are, knowing it's not who we are, knowing not where we'll be forever, but bringing compassion to our situation in any given moment. And I guess, you know, it is almost like that Aesop's fable of, you know, the wind and the sun having a competition to see who's the strongest. And, you know, the wind blows and uses all its power to try and blow the jacket off the guy so that it can be seen as strongest. And the man just holds on to it tighter. And that's what happens when we try and push something, isn't it? We cling on. And the sun gently warms it up. And that's the compassion. That's that gentle kind of, okay, we're okay here. We can stop here. And he takes his jacket off because he gets warm. There is no fight. There is no bullying. There is no struggle. It's just gently warming up. And it's that need for compassion to sustain us through a tricky experience that will show us when we do come through the other side, just how resilient we are.
And when you start to see, oh, actually, there's nothing I need to do. There might be things that you do. There might be things that it occurs to you to do when you're in a really tricky experience. I don't know what they are, but you know, you do. But it's not the thing that you're doing, whether it's unhelpful or healthy or not healthy, that's making that move on. It's that will move on anyway. You know, feelings don't rise and rise and rise until our heads explode. At some point now, they'll come back down. And when you start to build that evidence up for yourself, that actually, oh, hang on, this does come and go, this does rise and fall, that's when you start to see that you are the space that rises and falls within, that you are that being that is aware of all experiences. And that's, I think, when you start to really get very curious about, and perhaps even start to trust the resilience that is you. That is you.
And I think often people talk about building resilience, don't they, or creating resilience, or
resilience.
And actually what we're saying very, very clearly is it's already there in you. It's already there in everybody. And even when we can't see it, you know, if I walk 2 miles down the road, I can't see my house, but I know it's here. I can trust that it's here. And sometimes when we're in tricky situations, we don't necessarily see our resilience. But if we know it's there as our home to rest into, we know that it'll be working for us even when we don't see it. And we'll come back to seeing it again at some point.
And that is, I think we've sort of landed, and we're pausing here, we're hovering here, because this is key. This piece here is really key to realizing your recovery from this eating disorder, these difficulties with your relationship, with your thinking about your body and food, is seeing what's really going on, who and what you really are here. And I think it's, you know what, the story comes to mind. You just told the story about your house, Sarah, but the story of when I took one of my, I took all three, I didn't leave any at home. I took all three of my children on holiday, and one of my kids was about 3 at the time, and we went to the beach for the day, had a lovely day. And then the next day we went back to the same beach at a different time of day. And as I was getting everything out of the car, she was stood on the wall in floods of tears. I thought she'd been stung. I thought she'd, you know, something happened, but no, she was upset because the sea had disappeared. And of course, to her, it just looked like the sea had gone. What a shame. I liked that water, and now it's not there. And of course, I had to then say, oh no, it's okay. The sea has not disappeared. The tide has gone out and it will come back. And when she saw evidence for that, she didn't get so upset, and she didn't fear playing in the sand or think it was a shame to be at the beach anymore. It was just, that's what's happening. That's what happens. And I think it's so easy to forget this when your peace or your clarity or your, I don't know, wisdom or whatever feels like it's gone, that you think it's gone and that you've lost it, or that you've relapsed, or that you've, but actually it's the transient nature of the human experience, and you are the blue sky. You're not the clouds.
No. And I guess, if we use that analogy as well, Mary, the idea of the beach and the sea, it's about knowing that it's all right. Whether we can paddle in the sea because the tide's in, or whether we make sandcastles in the sand because the tide's out, we don't need to judge that experience. We don't need to have good or bad. And I guess we do as humans, don't we? We judge our experiences. Some feel better, some feel worse. But they're all just experience until we put our thinking to them, until we put our judgments on them.
Until we start to sort of put them in our backpack and say, this is my identity, this is who I am, this is, it's like, I am the sort of person who is always angry or always anxious. I am an anxious person. I am this person. Because as I was thinking when you were talking there about paddling in the sand or wet sand, I was thinking, well, I wonder if people are thinking, well, what about when the storm's raging and the sea's high and I feel like I'm drowning? It's like, it's about seeing that beneath the stormy seas, there is miles and miles and miles of quiet peace within.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on up here, it's, what is that? Go slow, go low. It's like, just wait a minute, because beneath all of that is a new understanding of your identity on offer.
Yeah. And it's knowing that beneath all of that, you have health, you have well-being, you have the ability to come through everything. That resilience is there. I've got my little reindeer, and it doesn't work very well on here because you can't see it on a flat surface. But I guess when we see our psychological balance, we are designed to be psychologically well. And sometimes life happens and it wobbles us a bit, and we might wobble for a while when our thinking gets busy and it feels hard, but without doing anything, we never quite fall over and can't get up. We come back. And it's trusting that within us, maybe sometimes very deep below our human experience of thought and feeling, it's there. Our ability to settle back up upright again, to be calm and to be back to our psychological well-being. We always rise back. It's only our thinking and our human experience that gets in the way of us doing that. It happens without us or in spite of us sometimes.
And if this feels like loads of nice stories and metaphors, look for the truth of this in your own experience and life. Listen, look at you, look at how resilient you are, look at what you've come through, look at how you are still here.
Look at how you're listening to this, despite being in the midst of an eating disorder, potentially, despite being in the midst of caring for somebody with an eating disorder, and that being incredibly difficult, caring or experiencing eating disorders, incredibly difficult, and yet you're still here. You're still looking for something. You're still open to something different.
And when that starts to happen, and being open to that, you might start to see a new understanding of who you are, which brings a whole different set of, or a new set, or a different flavor of thought and feeling experience and understanding and acceptance. And then you're in a different circle, really. And that's not to say that you won't swap and sway and go back and forth, but it's just really getting an awareness of, oh, this is what's been going on for me, this is what's happening, and this is what's possible. And I guess, go on.
Not at all who I am. This is just how I am right now.
Yeah. So we would love for you, having watched this, to come to the hub with all of your hang on a minute, or well, just slow down a second there, or questions or reflections or feelings that you've got as you've listened to this and you've watched this, and anything that this brings up for you, anything that you want to question, to discuss, present, share, you know, please come along to the hub. Let's email us in, tell us what it is that this brings up for you, tell us what you want to explore, and we'll just explore it with you as humans with you.
And I guess as well, you know, that's the thing. We are just a group of humans, aren't we? And it's not just Mary and I or any of the other facilitators. You know, there's a shared experience with so many people that come to the hub and see something different, see something new, sometimes feel stuck in what they're seeing, but they come each week to be open to something different, to be open to a new experience or seeing something new in their thinking. So, you know, there's a lot of wisdom to be held in the hub, and there's a lot of support.
And that's the thing, you know, you don't have to be on your own with this, and we really want to welcome you with all of our hearts to a space where you can connect with us, with each other, so that you're not just swimming around in your own weather, because that can be horrible. It's nice to get under someone else's umbrella with them for a bit and go, hey, what do you think of this, you know? So please do come along. We'd love to see you there.
We would. We really would.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
You're at the hub.
See you at the hub.